Welcome to a brief overview of the National Center and State Collaborative Learning Progressions Frameworks. The intended goals of this module are to introduce or become aware of the National Center and State Collaboratives, or NCSIC's, Learning Progressions Frameworks. Understand where the learning progressions fit in NCSIC's instructional triangle, and recognize that the Learning Progressions Frameworks is referenced in the materials and resources provided by the project. In the Overview module of NCSIC's approach to access to the Common Core State Standards for students with a significant cognitive disability, the curriculum, instruction, and assessment triangle was introduced, noting communicative competency as the base for access, all to support college, career, and community readiness. The curriculum component specifies what students will be taught and learn and includes Common Core State Standards, Learning Progressions Frameworks, and Core Content Connectors, or CCCs. This webinar will introduce the curriculum component of the Learning Progressions Frameworks. Let's begin by addressing what learning progressions are. The Learning Progressions Frameworks, or LPF, present a broad description of the essential content and general sequencing for student learning and skill development. The Learning Progressions Frameworks is a hypothesized pathway that typical peers may take and is meant to inform what typical peers will be working on grade by grade. In the past, we have struggled to understand how to choose content grade by grade to ensure inclusion of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities in grade-specific and age-appropriate content, especially when a student may not have learned or been exposed to all the skills in a previous grade. The Learning Progressions Frameworks give us the educational logic to help move these students along with their peers in a logical, educationally sound way. National content experts and researchers in mathematics were asked to identify specific content strands that represented a way to organize essential learning for all students K through 12. The strands provide a framework for discussing the knowledge, skills, and abilities that constitute mathematical proficiency. 6 major strands were identified for the Learning Progressions Frameworks: symbolic expression, represented by the abbreviation SE, the nature of numbers and operations, NO, measurement, ME, patterns, relations, and functions, PRF, geometry, GM, data analysis, probability, and statistics, DPS. It is not the intent that skills and concepts from a particular strand be taught in isolation, in a linear sequence, but rather be integrated among the strands, such as in a problem-solving situation, where students are demonstrating their understanding of measurement concepts while applying the knowledge of numbers and operations and using symbolic expression. In other words, the Learning Progressions Frameworks should be thought of as a general map for learning and not a single route to a destination. We will look at how to read the learning progressions through the strand of patterns, relations, and functions. Let's examine the 3 components of the Learning Progressions Frameworks: strands, learning targets, and progress indicators. The Learning Progressions Frameworks begins with the strand. The strand includes a description of its enduring understanding, or big idea, across all grades K through 12. This statement describes the learning that should endure over the long term and resides at the heart of the discipline. For example, each component of the patterns, relations, and functions strand will relate to the enduring understanding, or big idea, that patterns, relations, and functions are used to represent and analyze change in various contexts. make predictions and generalizations, and provide models and explanations for real-world phenomena. The next components in the learning progressions frameworks are the learning targets. Learning targets break down the K through 12 big idea to more specific descriptions of what students should know and be able to do by the end of specified grade bands K through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12. The learning targets for the strand of patterns, relations, and functions show how conceptual understanding in the strand deepen and broaden across a student's school career. In this case, students at the elementary level are expected to give examples, interpret, and analyze repeating and growing patterns and functions involving the four basic operations of mathematics. By the end of middle school, students give examples, interpret, and analyze a variety of mathematical patterns, relations, and explicit and recursive functions. Finally, by the end of high school, and to be college and career ready, students use trends and analyze a variety of mathematical patterns, relations, and explicit and recursive functions. Continuing with our example in the Learning Progressions Framework strand of patterns, relations, and functions, and using the K through 4 elementary learning target of give examples, interpret, and analyze repeating and growing patterns and functions involving the four basic operations, you can see how the learning target begins to build towards the strand's big idea or enduring understanding. The next components in the Learning Progressions frameworks are the progress indicators. The progress indicators further break down the big ideas and learning targets into more specific descriptions of what students should know and be able to do by the end of shorter, specific grade spans within a grade band, and use research synthesis to establish a general order of how the skills and concepts emerge for typical peers. While the learning targets specify what students should know and be able to do at the end of elementary, middle, and high school, the progress indicators do the same, but at a finer grain size. At the elementary level, progress indicators identify the specific skills and concepts that build toward performance of the learning target, and are organized in grade spans K2 and 3-4. The middle school progress indicators are organized in grade spans 5-6 and 7-8. Finally, the grades 9-10 and 11-12 progress indicators develop the skills and concepts necessary to achieve the high school learning target. Using the patterns, relations, and functions elementary learning target example, let's review the progress indicators for grade clusters K2 and 3-4. Notice that the progress indicators are presented in a general order of how the skills and concepts emerge for most students, and how the skills and concepts deepen and broaden to build toward achievement of the elementary learning target. Learning progressions help us, as teachers, to see the skills that come before and after in a learning sequence. This can be very helpful in analyzing student learning to identify what is missing or needs to be strengthened and/or supported, as well as planning instruction across multiple grades within a classroom. The core content connectors, which have been aligned to the Common Core State Standards, are duly aligned to the Learning Progressions frameworks and specify grade-level learning that leads to mastery of the progress indicators. The core content connectors cannot simply be taught as isolated skills out of context. Skills and concepts must be built during instruction and practiced in multiple contexts to truly promote the use and generalization of mathematical concepts. Using the Learning Progressions frameworks as a guide helps to identify how the core content connectors are pulled together to allow for the development of schemas that deepen and broaden conceptual understandings. Notice that in the National Center and State Collaborative model, the codes identifying individual core content connectors are derived from the learning progressions frameworks. As just mentioned, the core content connectors are duly aligned to the Common Core State Standards and the learning progressions frameworks, as illustrated in the NCSIC Instructional Resources Schema. Alignment to the Common Core promotes access to grade-level content and fosters instruction of the Common Core State Standards for students with a significant cognitive disability. Alignment to the learning progressions frameworks, on the other hand, promotes teaching towards defined learning outcomes and also promotes sequential instruction of big ideas and concepts across grades and grade bands. Be aware that the learning targets and/or progress indicators of the learning progressions frameworks are referenced in most of the resource materials produced by NCSIC. For example, the element cards reference the Common Core State Standard, the core content connectors, and the learning progressions, strand, and progress indicators. As a review, the learning progressions help to organize the curriculum to show what knowledge and skills lead up to the current grade level and what knowledge and skills come after. They also provide a framework for planning instruction from beginning levels of understanding to more sophisticated ways of thinking about an idea or concept. The sites listed can be used if you would like more information on the learning progressions frameworks for mathematics or the Common Core State Standards for mathematics. Thank you very much.